Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. This is episode 9, and we have the pleasure of having Paul Nash with us today. Now, I met Paul through a group on TikTok, I believe, or just his TikTok page, and I'm curious to ask him all about his story and how he came about to come onto TikTok with his organization and page, BrainStorm. So we're going to just start with you, Paul. How are you?
Yeah, thanks. How you doing?
So tell us about yourself.
Hey, so we met because obviously I've had a similar situation. I had a stroke when I was 49, which was just last year in
Wow.
December. So it's been just a little over a year. It's December of 2025 or 2024, sorry. And yeah, so I guess I'm a little new to recovery compared to you two because you're 2000.
Okay, so your stroke was just last year.
Yeah, just over a year. I just had my 1 year.
Your one
Um,
year happy anniversary. What now? Was it a hemorrhagic stroke or an
yeah,
ischemic?
it was hemorrhagic. So it was right side, so I was left side paralyzed at first.
Yes, that's like me, and Brenda's got a weakness on the left also.
Exactly.
Yours was
Okay.
hemorrhagic.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Yours was hemorrhagic as well.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. 3 of us are hemorrhagic, so 3 miracles here.
Yeah. Mine was from a ruptured brain aneurysm. Um, and Brenda's, from what you told me, Brenda, I think it's an AVM, which is related to brain aneurysms, but they called it something else. Her doctors call it cavernous
Membranous malformation.
Yeah.
malformation. So I'm not really sure if that's the same thing. But was yours caused by just a
Uh,
burst,
no,
just bad luck?
That
Okay.
and that's what
Okay.
caused it.
I see.
It
All
wasn't
right. So
taken.
now I know you work because we had to do our recording a little later, and you just got a promotion, I heard.
So I went back to work at the sometime at the end of November, and I did sort of maybe a little earlier than that, a gradual return to work. They had me on modified hours, and then
Okay,
so that
great.
promoted me, and I started full time back.
So now you're back to work, and how do you find it? How do you manage your energy?
Slightly overwhelming still. I'm still like
Yeah,
at the end of an 8 hour day, my brain pretty much is fried.
you're shot.
It's definitely not like even at the beginning when they were the company I worked for was really accommodating. They're great about bringing me back.
Wow.
I actually technically went back earlier than I should have. My doctor recommended. It's just I'm having a nightmare getting financial help. Right? I
Right.
mean, the stress of no finances was going to do more damage than the stress of work was going to do to me. Right?
Yeah. Finances are a huge problem once you have a stroke. You're used to that income. I'm single. It's me and myself and I as far as income goes. So I was forced to move in with family to help me out a little bit with finances, as well as when I was recovering. So I definitely understand that. Oh,
'Cause
so
we're
you get
fortunate I work,
now,
but it wouldn't be sustainable long term with me being off work.
right? I gotcha. So is your job a very physically demanding job, or is it more like a desk? Oh, good.
It's actually switched what I'm doing. So I work at a call center,
Okay.
and I was up for the years prior to the stroke. I was on a very specific project, and ironically, it was scheduling at-home care nurses for people's
Wow.
solutions. I've been moved over to another project in my promotion, though, so I'm not doing that anymore. But
Okay.
yeah, yeah, I sort
All
of
right.
like
Good.
one of the first things I thought I was like, God, I really hope I don't like end up having to get the nurses that I was scheduled.
Yeah. Have to coordinate that for you.
Yeah.
So now tell us about Brainstorm and what you guys focus on and when did that
So
start?
it's started. So I have a friend who I strongly suggest you guys also have on the show.
Okay.
She and her shortly after my stroke, my cousin put us in touch with each other. She had recently had a stroke, so I guess she thought my
Wow.
cousin we'd have something in common, and that
Okay.
she had to help me. And like same hospital, everything, but hers was just 4 months before mine, right? So she was already, I guess, 5 months, but she was already out of the hospital by this week, and in that stage of recovery. So we started chatting, and it just went from there. Like we realized we had the same struggles. I mean, clinically, we're considered young stroke survivors. You don't feel it because I'm 50 years old, right?
Mhm.
But here, they actually classify a young stroke survivor being anyone under 65, right? Because
Yeah.
up until 2005, the average age of first stroke was 70 years old, and then it
Yep.
drastically changed
Yeah.
post 2000.
Yeah. I was
And then
32 and they kept saying, "You're too young. You're too young to have this happen."
they still
And
say that one out
yeah,
of every four strokes.
absolutely. Yeah, I
Uh,
think they need to change their demographics
and
and the
that's
causes
why we
even.
that's why we started BrainStorm, because the system is still designed for people over 70, right? Like if
Right.
you if you read statistics and stuff like that, it's scary. And like, of course, I was obsessively. Well, I mean, I was paralyzed, trapped in a hospital bed for 3 months. So I
Right.
was looking up stuff, and when you read the statistics, it's like, it was like something only a 27% chance of living a further 5 years, and that's terrifying. But when you realize that they're still
Sure.
collecting all their data from the 70 years plus crowd, right? So a lot of that data is people passing away just because they had the stroke at such a
Right, right.
later in life. Everything is still designed around that. Like treatments. I mean, I know maybe a little different in the States. Like in the States, I'm sure it's different per state to state, but in Canada, there's a general like way of treatment, and it's all formed around seniors still, right?
The
And that's
elderly, yeah.
and honestly, Brainstorm was sort of born out of the idea that in my last days in the hospital, they came and brought me a bunch of like pamphlets, right? Like going, oh,
There you
there you go.
go. We saved your life. There you go.
Yeah. Yep.
And it
Good
was like
luck. Bye-bye.
one on a pamphlet where like 90-year-old people, right? And
Wow.
Eric and I joked that we don't see ourselves in this at all. And
Right.
it was hard to sort of get information. It was hard to reach out and find others. I mean, up here we have March of Dimes, which they do like groups and stuff like that. But even within those groups, you still feel, and like I said, I'm not even like, I don't really personally consider myself a young survivor, even though I fit in the category of young survivor. It just wasn't directed towards, because it's all recovery up here, and any group it's all directed towards people who've retired from their jobs, who don't, they're empty
Yeah.
nesters, they're home alone,
Yep.
like where Eric and I is like, you spend 3 months in hospital to being told that you might not get better, you might die, you're never gonna walk again, and then 3 months later they're like, you better go to work and pay taxes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's insane. The expectations are insane.
So that's sort of
Yeah.
what, and we wanted to like, have a space for other young survivors. We had no idea that like TikTok was just. I'm sure you've experienced this with TikTok. It's almost crowded, and
Yeah. Yeah, I
the,
noticed
the
that.
the demographics almost changing, right? Like when
Yeah.
I first came to TikTok, it was like I was finding other young survivors, but they were like these 30s, 50s. But there is
Mhm.
a lot of 20-something stroke survivors that are showing up on the app
Yes.
doing the same thing because they don't know where else to get help, because they're in a hospital where they're surrounded by seniors and they're being treated as a senior themselves. And
Exactly.
that's sort of why we started. And I
Well,
mean,
that's amazing. That's fantastic because
So
I think
I'm
they
sorry,
realize.
I
Go ahead,
have a
honey.
question because I am not personally on TikTok. So, Paul, is that the only place where you are, or can I find you on Instagram or Facebook?
Facebook as well.
Okay.
Uh,
And it's called,
Erica runs.
just so people can, if people want to follow, it's called Brainstorm. Okay. Okay. I'm going to find it right now while you're talking.
Yeah. We'll put your information in the description of the video when we upload it so people can find you.
So
Perfect.
Erica, she runs the Instagram and Facebook, and I handle the TikTok. Because the TikTok's
Okay.
sort of local. I'm sure as he's found out, Tracy, right? Like it's even
Yeah, that's
like
the one.
a full-time job to just I filter the people who follow the page, right? Because
Yeah,
I want actual survivors and like or caregivers. I don't want
right.
people
It's
to
hard
follow.
because in order to grow like that and for further reach, you have to go in, and I don't like doing it because you get everybody, but
Yeah,
going into other people's lives and they just do it so for growth. So everyone, if I enter the room, then I comment or send a heart or whatever, and then they're like, follow Tracy. And that's the only way to get your numbers up. And the only way for further reach is to get your numbers up. So I have 1,500 followers now, and I'm following about 2,500, which is so out of whack.
yeah. We have 15, but like I said, I get it. Like I
You pick and choose.
get
Right.
nosy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't find people that are nosy. I find that they just don't engage, which is fine because my belief is that everybody knows somebody in their life, whether they're really close or not, that is affected by stroke, brain aneurysm, TBI, ABI. So even if I'm reaching out to someone who never had a stroke, they may be talking about us as somebody they know that has had a stroke.
And
And somehow then, no, that's okay.
very likely could be somebody that can't engage, right? Somebody
Yes.
that's a ability
Yes.
and are able to just observe, right? Like
Right.
on our Instagram account, we have this wave of somebody who's like keeps commenting under each post, send me this post. And we are like, is this a bot? Like we were trying to figure out what it was. But
Yeah,
I
the
think
bots now.
but I actually think it's somebody with an assisted device that isn't able to speak or that's getting the post sent the computer that
Oh,
translates it. So 'cause
yeah,
I
that's
actually
important that they're able to reach you.
I mean with you and I mean I know we used it like it's been what 22 years, Tracy, since you had the aneurysm? Or
21. Is it
On
Friday, Brenda, the
Friday.
23rd?
On Friday.
Friday. Woo woo.
Yeah.
you're
21
close,
years for me. Yeah.
close to that at this point. But the
Yeah,
big thing
it was
is
a
there
3-day ordeal. So it's actually was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 21 years ago exactly. So, every year the day changes, but it was on the 23rd. So it's kind of like, okay, Friday, I remember going to the Broadway play and then getting on, trying to get to the train. So that was Friday night that I had that headache. But then Saturday, I got up, went to the chiropractor, spent the whole day just dealing with the headache and taking a nap. And then Saturday evening, the 24th, is when I actually had the seizure, the stroke, and went unconscious. That's when I finally went to the hospital. So that was Saturday night. So then Sunday is when I was actually transported to New York City, and that's where they operated on me. That's where I had the surgery. So that wasn't until Sunday night around 9 p.m. So I had been bleeding from Friday evening till Sunday night. So I'm sure that had a huge impact on my weakness and my peripheral vision loss at the time. But they didn't know. 21 years ago, no one was talking about brain aneurysm. No one. And they were treating me. My brother said they were just looking at me as a seizure patient because my brother said I saw her have a seizure and go unconscious. So we thought I just had a migraine for 2 days. So nobody thought of, checking for a bleed. And then I think I got to the hospital on Saturday at like 9, 10 p.m. And it wasn't until 1 a.m. that they actually did a scan of my brain and came back and said, you have a ruptured brain aneurysm, you're bleeding in the brain. And I was like, what? Don't people die from that? And I literally said that to the doctor. And he said, yeah, you're very lucky. But it took them that many hours to even look for a brain bleed. So, and then they just sedated me until they got me out of the hospital I was in because they were not a specialty hospital. And they wanted to wait until they could transport me to New York City where there was a well-renowned surgeon. But, they didn't life flight me. It wasn't urgent. They just sedated me and waited. And then Sunday afternoon, they decided to drive me in by ambulance. So I was like, okay, this seems kind of urgent. Why are we driving and why has it been 2 full days? But, things have changed now with more awareness and, doctors, they know now, I think, to think on their toes and be like, this could very well be, a ruptured brain aneurysm, a hemorrhagic stroke. But then, they just thought I had a seizure. So it's the only seizure I had in my life.
I actually have a question for you, Paul, because you were talking about the title, I guess. I can't think of a better word. Young stroke survivor, which we would all fall into,
Yeah.
even now. Even
Yeah.
6 years later, I was young because I was 40. I was 47 when it happened. But my question is also, because I know that you said, I don't remember how you worded it, but basically lifestyle and health. That's what caused. But for me, I know I didn't fit any kind of profile. I was fit. I was strong. I was not a drinker. I was not a smoker. I didn't have to fit any of those, what you think of as
Yes.
of like alarming behaviors that would make you think. And so, Trey, while you talked about several days of bleeding, like for me, I had a 3-week migraine. We don't know if I was bleeding then. I could have, but who knows? Well, I think we'll never know. But my question for you, Paul, is I guess I will look for myself on your Instagram. But if you talk about young stroke survivors and trying to reach young people, do you also talk about this idea of like there isn't like a kind of like a checklist of like, okay, this makes you at risk, because it could be anybody.
So that is the core of BrainStorm. Because Erica, my partner, same as you, she was an athlete. She was actually hiking when she had her stroke, right?
Wow.
She was in like that, and that's sort of we're sort of like opposite in that sense. She spent her whole life like with a lifestyle that to prevent something like this from happening. Right. So I was just sabotaging myself right to the end, right? Like I was like a crashing point. But so the same thing happened with her. There's no reason she should have had a stroke. And that's a lot. And especially the younger ones that I tell you that are in the 20s and 30s, they're coming.
Yeah.
They have no reason as to why that they don't understand why. And I think it's detrimental. The FAST acronym is detrimental because that's what triage is using. Like they're going to come in and they're like, face. And they use that.
Consider that as a possibility.
Right. So if they don't see the symptoms on that checklist, they turn you away. Especially women. I mean, this is a whole other argument, but I'm sure you guys know that like 40% of women are initially misdiagnosed and are sent away from the hospital when they're having a stroke. 40%.
Twice
she was.
Yet the big thing is time is brain, right? Like time is the important thing.
Right.
Which makes it like nuts that they do that. And that's what we've been trying to, even because we've been dealing with health systems up here. We're telling them that they need to change this. They need it because it's such a complex thing that as a whole, it's not designed to deal with young stroke survivors yet, right? Like I'd like to say that's happening faster than they can handle it, but it did. 2005 started happening, so they had time, right? Like there was a plan that started in 2005. I mean, they have there's no really associated reason with that, but lifestyle, diet, right? Stress, like we have
stress. Yeah. And when they talk about,
they have no hope right now.
Yeah. When you're younger and have a stroke, your goals once you recover are much different than someone who's elderly. When they're elderly, they imagine they're going to go into a home or they're going to live with a relative. When you're 30s, like I was, 40s, you still have time to keep working and to keep having goals outside of the house and to rehabilitate and get strength and cognitive development, all of those things. And they just still will tell you, well, we saved your life. Just be glad you're alive.
Right.
No, that's
You
it's
get
not
grateful,
it's not okay.
gratitude.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, I'm definitely grateful. Don't get me wrong. Definitely grateful. But when I left the hospital, I thought I was the only one that ever survived a brain aneurysm. There was nothing on the internet. There were
and
no information. It was all about death statistics. And it wasn't until the following year that things started to come up, a little more information on the internet. And like you, I was an avid researcher. I'm like, why did this happen to me? I
yeah,
was always a little heavy, but I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have, well, my job was a little stressful, but I didn't have those typical warning categories, those signs, so they had no idea. So, like, when I had to leave the hospital, I wanted to get out of rehab as soon as possible because then there was a billing issue. They wanted to say, once I got to the rehab hospital, sorry, we don't take your insurance. And I said, didn't the social worker work on this before I was even transported from New York City back to Long Island? So that was on the 5th day that I was there. And I said, I'm not staying here and getting billed for this. This should have been worked out.
Yeah.
And I was getting upset. And they're like, don't get upset. Don't get upset. I'm like, well, you're telling me now that I'm responsible for this bill. No, don't worry about it. Because I didn't know, but they were worried of me having a vasospasm because I
Sure.
was in that window. I had no idea what vasospasms were. But I just said, I called my sister and I said, you got to get me out of here. They're going to bill me. And we went home. Like, she picked me up. We went home the very next day. So I didn't have a lot of time in the rehab hospital. So I did some things at home, and then I couldn't afford the co-pays to continue the therapy, physical and occupational therapy. So everything was thrown off. Like, my rehabilitation, I think, could have gone so much further if I
absolutely.
had the finance. Yeah, if I had the ability to pay for the co-pays. The co-pays were $40 and they wanted me to go 3 times a week. How on earth could I afford that?
Right.
So I just said, okay, I'll do it on my own. And I'm sure I didn't do everything right. In fact, I know I didn't do everything right. But
There wasn't the like now. I mean, we can go to YouTube and have like learn
yes,
what I did
yes,
myself.
there was none of that. None. There
But
was Facebook wasn't around. I don't even think we had. I think I had a cell phone, but it wasn't anything like these with cameras and it was
smartphones,
the flip texting. Yeah, like there was nothing. And, now there's people with GoFundMe's and all these fundraisers. I didn't have that. I could have used that definitely, but I had none of that opportunities. So,
Right.
everything happens for a reason. And everything you're describing is the reason why I'm starting a business that will help people once they're discharged and they get home to kind of coordinate their services, see what they need, guide them, and, reach out and help them organize their appointments and prepare them for when they go back to the doctor and help them keep track of their energy and their pain and, what's going on. So I'm starting that business and I wish I had that when I left because my sister was my caregiver and we were on our own. We were panicked. We're like, we can't leave the hospital. We don't know anything. You know,
and that
I was at the ER like
is
3 times within a month or so because I thought I was having another one. Come
every
to
time you're
find
like,
out come to find out you have all these weird things. Once I had a shunt and then I had the headache still and I needed to nap, for 4 hours every day. My sister's like, "Why is she sleeping so much? No one told us that that was normal and your brain is healing while you sleep." Like, these are all things we should have known, you know?
So,
Now
is answering some of those questions part of the purpose of BrainStorm? I'm
yeah,
sorry, I'm speaking without having looked at it.
no,
yeah, yeah,
no, me too.
I look forward to looking at it.
yeah. I mean, it's not like deep. We do profiles on survivors.
Okay.
We put statistics and even just thoughts of the day because sometimes, like, here's the thing that's different about young stroke survivors compared to older stroke survivors is that we have more neurological deficits than age because a stroke happening to a young brain that's active at the time that it happens actually has a different repercussion than a brain that's sort of sunset. right?
Yeah.
So, and that's like with me, I have disorder, like I have alien hand syndrome. So for the first month or so that I was in the hospital, my left hand would do things out of my control, like grab things, pull plugs out of plugs. It would
Wow.
pick up,
Wow.
like, and that wasn't voluntary, right? It wasn't like, it took me a long time to sort of, like, I had left side neglect, and it took me a long time to get rid of that. And that's part of that disassociation with my body, right? So it's stuff like that. And then I had, there's a disorder that I can't pronounce the name of, but basically I was laughing at things that you don't generally laugh at, crying at things you don't generally cry
Right.
at.
Your emotions, yeah.
And so, I mean, and those, just like everything else, sort of did dissipate over time. Every once in a
Right.
while, left and misbehaves, but so
Yeah.
it's just it's still disconnected. The brain's still trying to figure out how to. But
100%.
Yeah, I've
like
never heard somebody describe it that way.
I
What was the name where your hand was doing its own thing, like unintentionally?
Alien has it.
In hand syndrome. Oh wow, I've never heard of that. Wow.
that,
Yeah.
And Paul, the other thing I wanted to mention was Tracy shared you reading the letter that you wrote to yourself when you had,
Yes. That was
honestly,
beautiful.
even just thinking, I can't, I'd have to listen to it again. But as I was listening, I was having shivers because, as I'm sure you could both attest to, like, so often it feels like no one really gets this. But
Right.
as I listened to you reading that, I was like, oh, somebody gets it.
Yeah.
and that again another reason for brainstorm, because that's what happened when Eric and I met. Is that we finally had somebody that understood what each other was going through, right? I mean,
Right.
every
Right.
show is different, right? And we're going through completely different things, but we're more in tune to what those different things are.
Absolutely.
I had
Yeah.
sort of like a weird, like, it was another reason we sort of together were sort of mirror opposites of what happened to each other.
Mhm.
So I mean, when I had the stroke, I was over 400 pounds. When
Wow.
they wrote me off. They wrote me off as this guy's not
All
gonna.
right. Which is
They
so
told me
unfair.
they told me the first night that I was gonna die, and then if that progressed, you're not gonna walk again. You're never gonna be able to go to the bathroom on your own again. And it wasn't until like a month that I was in the hospital till there was a specific physiotherapist who sort of did things a little differently, and she lit the fire under my ass, and she just like sorry, she without her, because like I'm saying, the system itself isn't designed to take care of young stroke survivors, but there's
Right.
people within the system that recognize that, and they're trying to do it right. And she was definitely one of those people. So I mean, it was a perfect storm for me, meaning like I came in there, I was, like I said, I was over 400 pounds. They wrote me off, uh, and it was December. All the medical staff was using up their vacation days and their sick days.
Mhm.
I really felt like I spent the first 4 to 6 weeks laying in a bed by myself. In the,
Wow. That's awful.
and I was completely paralyzed, right down to on the left side, right. And so, and there was problems at first. So the first time they got me up, like if they had to use a crane, right, to get me up into a chair. I had a medical emergency. They almost sent me back to critical care because my blood pressure dropped, right? Like
Wow.
drastic. And so again, like there, it was a bizarre situation where just the first month was completely hopeless. And I didn't have anyone sort of giving hope, right? Like it was a bizarre situation. And like what we were saying before about how they need to change the way they treat people at triage, meaning like when somebody comes in, they spent so much time burning that FAST acronym into the medical system's head. I think it's actually causing damage as much as it's helping right now, right? It's helping us figure it out.
Right. Right.
It's not help. It's allowing medical care people to just sort of, because I mean, not to their fault. They do have to use a checklist because it's like so many. They're just constantly having to go, right? But at the same time, and this is a big thing we talk about too, is that they need to change their language as well. Like instead
Yes.
of instead of the doctor coming in and telling me that you're probably never going to walk again, they could come in and said recovery is possible. So they're not telling me that I'm going to walk again.
No.
They're but they are starting the healing process with hope, right? Like, and not with you're done for.
Yeah, that's so sad.
And I mean, that's a common thing of everyone I talk to through the TikTok account, and is that they similar situations of people are told that they're never going to walk again, they're going to die, and that's it's mainly because doctors have programmed themselves to not give false hope. But
Right.
honestly, to give no hope is just as damaging because it's not
Yeah.
statistically recovery is more statistically possible than not recovery, right? Like, so
Yeah.
they're sort of being hypocritical in that sense.
Right.
Yeah, they need to adjust how they speak to people and what's possible. I mean,
But you know what I believe that you're doing, Paul, by starting this is that you are infusing the idea of hope at an early age, because who knows how many of these young people are themselves going to turn around to be therapists or doctors or interacting with other stroke survivors, which is amazing. So thank you for that.
yes, it's
Yes.
fantastic what you're doing. And now your video got really clear.
Well, it wasn't before.
No, it was kind of like pixelated. I don't know, but it's just all about the connection.
And that's
Yeah.
literal and metaphoric, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, I am so glad that you brought this up because I was feeling that, but I could never express it. Like I'm not that young and I want to keep living and thriving, but it was always, oh, you'll never drive again. Your vision will never come back. You know, whatever you lost after a year, whatever you lost is gone. That's not true anymore.
And I mean, if go look at the other accounts on TikTok, Tracy, you will see that like there's so much data on TikTok, and I've told the hospitals this that that's where they need to go to find information
Yeah,
because that's where young people are going because they don't know where else to go, right? To
right.
share, there's so much data available there, but it's like there was one of the more prominent accounts the other day where the guy just started getting movement 6 years after his stroke, like his arm and his leg, like it was just.
Yes.
And when you're in the hospital, they're telling you, to me, they're telling me in the first 6 months that there was no that
Right.
pretty much right. Like,
Right.
Yeah, and it brings you down mentally. So when you're told that, you're just defeated. And meanwhile, if you were given some kind of hope, you would be more driven to keep trying and try to get some movement back. And, you know, it's all a mental game too, and they're just ruining people's motivation by telling them you're not going to get
that,
anything.
and that's how they're starting the recovery process, right? Like with that. And I think honestly, for me, it was meeting Erica because she had healed to the point where she was walking and like, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is a possibility.
It's possible,
Get hemorrhagic as well, right? Like,
right?
but so that's a sort of a big thing that we're trying to do, and we're fortunate enough that the health systems out here have reached out to connect with us, right? Like because they noticed. So,
Good, that's great. And we'd love to have her on as well, maybe toward the end of February, because I've got some people lined up, but definitely. And if you want to join her in that, we can have both of you on. Okay.
okay.
And so we'll figure that part out later, but what you're doing is fantastic. And I'm so glad that you're reaching people. I mean, TikTok seems to be the way to reach the most people, you
Is
know?
and that we weren't prepared for that. Like we weren't prepared for how.
Yeah, it's supposed to be for like dances for kids and,
Yeah. Right.
and networking with their friends, but it's really educational now.
Yeah. There's some
Yeah.
amazing. I'm sure because I mean, it is still a specific group of people, right? Even though there's lots of us on
Yes.
there.
Yes. Well, I have to do more research in the stroke community. Maybe I'll go to your page and follow some of the people you're following. Because I have people from all over, every niche you can think of. So I would like to learn more about the people specifically who have dealt with what we've dealt with. So, yeah, I'll do some more research on that. But as far as what we do, we're just trying to get our message out as much as we can because we feel this is very helpful for people, whether it's 21 years ago or just last year, that there are so many others. And your thoughts and your fears and frustrations, they're all validated. Like, we laugh a lot because we have some crazy stories, through our recovery, and we think that's important too. Like, we don't always want it to be, so down and, oh, woe is me. And yes, we definitely have those moments, but that's why we call it the lighter side because we like to acknowledge more of the funny
Yeah.
things or the more positive things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think we talked earlier on, Trey, about because for me, when I had mine, it was right at the beginning of COVID. So that
Yeah.
whole other pickle. So any groups that I did try to go to, and by that point, they did exist. But when I got on there, everyone was like pretty negative and pretty down. Which,
Yeah.
on one hand, I understand
Right.
because I feel like that. But to have what you do, Paul, to have hope, to have like genuine connection, is so valuable to me, and that I know that is something that we're trying to promote is for people to feel connected and not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first
Thank you
met
for doing that.
Yeah, thank you so much. When I first met another survivor face to face, I cried. It was probably 2 years later, and I had met somebody that lived in Rochester, New York, where I lived for many years after college, and we were talking back and forth, and I said, I'm going to be up in Rochester to visit some friends. Would you like to meet up?" And she lived right in the same area. So we did. Her name is Trish, and we still talk. And we just hugged, and because she had never met someone else who survived. And to have that connection, we both just had tears. We were like, wow, that connection meant so much to us. And we didn't know how much we needed it.
Right.
We had no idea how much that would mean to us. So that's why, the face to face support groups are so important. But again, Brenda, like you said, I don't want to sit in a room where everyone's just, why can't I do this? Oh, I don't want to, this is happening. And, it's okay for an outlet or to be an outlet for that, but
Not all of it.
not all of it, and we need the hope.
Balance, yeah.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's the issue with that, especially with young and like, well, I mean, young
Yeah.
and say 20s, 30s, right? Is that that's not how they communicate. They don't do group sessions type thing. And that's what we're trying to figure out. It's like how,
Yeah, it's true.
that's why I went to TikTok. And I say, like, they don't want to go to a group meeting at, like, the Lions, like, hall type thing.
Yeah, you're
They
right.
they don't even want to do group, group like this. Like, they don't want to do teams or, they don't want to do, because they all have young stroke survivors also have COVID PTSD where they have to go to school,
Right.
Mhm.
like, and they hate it. So there's got to be another way to reach TikTok and was the
Yeah.
but
You
it's
have
got
to
to be
meet them where they are, right?
further than that, like group chats. There's got to be an evolution of like a group text chat type thing is how they all
Yeah.
communicate.
Yeah. I mean, because you're right. They're this generation of kids and young adults, they're not getting together face to face. It's all virtual. And, they pour out their heart and soul sometimes and it's in a chat. Like you said, it's on a
Yeah.
TikTok,
Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's great that you
Brenda.
can recognize that and really work toward changing that.
Now I don't know what the health system's like in Quebec, but in Ontario, I had, and you were during COVID, so you probably got kicked out of the hospital right away, weren't you?
Yeah.
So, you're fortunate in Ontario that OHIP covered like 12 weeks of hospital physiotherapy, and then they also covered 12 weeks of outpatient once you got home. I don't know if it's the same in Montreal. Like it's
So, I can't speak specifically to numbers like you just said, but the way that I just have described it several times is in the public system, it's almost like they were trying to get me to the bare minimum of how to get rid of me, as opposed to getting me to my maximum.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to get to my maximum. I don't know what that'll be. I don't know how long it'll take, but that's what I want to work for.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I have to rely on other alternative opportunities, whether it's like things like yourself, Paul, or talking with Tracy, or doing my own research, doing my own work. And Tracy knows I am incredibly disciplined. I will do things because
She is.
I am not going to listen to this myth of like, okay, the window's closed, your year's up. Nope, I'm going to
No.
keep, because who knows how much more I can continue to gain. And for me, one of the advantages of being a young stroke survivor is that we have gained a wisdom that maybe someone else had to be 70, 80, or 90 to get there.
Yeah.
But we got it
Mhm.
early enough that we can actually implement the wisdom and live with it.
Yes. Good point. That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have so much to give. Our lived experience has a tremendous amount of information that doctors now can use if they would only reach out and listen
Yeah.
and hopefully change their practices a little bit. But I have to say, through the Brain Aneurysm Foundation, which is out of Boston, they do a lot they support people that are starting support groups, but they also give a lot of money in grant money for doctors to research and to help to prevent brain aneurysms, which, become strokes. So, they're a great resource, but again, they don't help you once you leave the hospital. They're an organization that helps with research and stuff, but doesn't help really the individual. And
Right.
the only thing they really do is I remember talking to them in 2011 maybe and asking, do you offer any help for survivors as far as any kind of funding, help financially, because it's devastating. Like my life was completely turned around. And she's like, no, that's not what we're here for. We're here to give information. And, I'm like, well, you're not really helping the survivors. You're helping the prevention, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. But there's nothing for the survivors, really. And it's left to us. It really is left up to us to support those survivors and not necessarily give them all the answers, but to help them to find the communities out there that can help them, whether it's helping them apply for benefits, seek out food banks or whatever we can. But I think the hugest one is the emotional support and just validating them. It's not impossible to get better. I never say you'll be 100% because nobody
You
knows what that 100% is.
can't promise anything, but you can't you can't
No.
guarantee I. So there is like recoveries, and I think that like for me, maybe I wouldn't have recovered, but at some point I had a switch go off in my brain. I was like, I'm gonna have, and it maybe like honestly, I was maybe helped by the fact that I was being neglected and written off at the beginning, because at some point I just went, screw it, and I went to YouTube and I started looking up like, because at that time I was still fully paralyzed. I was like, how do I get my hand back? Like it really, the hand is like the most noticeable at the beginning because you need it for
Yes.
some reason. Even though I mean I couldn't walk or move my leg or anything, but it's just still, even like while you're sitting and you're trying to feed yourself, and they bring you like a drink with a twist off that's right. All of a sudden
Yeah.
that's just so I looked at YouTube videos. I got my daughter to bring in like little weights, and I used my good hand, and I just said, like, I'm gonna do this. This is my full time job, and I went at it for 8 hours a day. I did a regiment of
Wow.
like of motion, and by the time the physiotherapist actually started working with me, by week 6, I had my entire arm and hand back, and they were shocked, right? Like because I did that.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
So
unbelievable.
Wow.
Good for you.
I have a very different but familiar, it reminds me of my own experience. Clearly, I don't have anything like you had, Paul, but I had when I was in the hospital, severe double vision. Severe. And they took me to a neuro-ophthalmologist who said, it's so bad, we can't even give you Prism to fix it. And then he said, I don't believe it'll work, but there are these vestibular exercises if you want to give it a try. But I, like you, it was like, I made it like my mission, my full-time job. And
Yeah.
I was doing these vestibular exercises so often that I ended up not 100%, but probably 95% fixing my double vision. And when I went back to the same neuro-ophthalmologist, he said, I don't believe it. You've made
Wow.
me believe that it's possible to do these things, because I think, and I'm sorry for any medical professionals out there who are relying on medicine or surgery or all these other kind of like typical or traditional approaches, but I think if we can be alternative, whether it's in mindset and being hopeful, or in doing these other potential ideas to help ourselves, who knows what we can do.
But then,
So
like,
Absolutely.
that's hope.
so in the hospital and with physiotherapists, obviously, the word that you hear the most often is neuroplasticity, right? Like, there's
Right,
Yeah.
right,
that's what it's going to take to get your leg back. That's what it's going to take. What they don't really talk about is that it's the same healing process for any emotional or mental deficit, right? And it's neuroplasticity. You have to retrain your brain. Like I told you, I was emotionally disconnected afterwards, right? So you have to fake being emotionally connected, and that actually starts making the connections again, right? Like it starts retraining your brain to do it. Like I I sort of like, hard to explain, but in the first like weeks after my stroke, I really felt disconnected from myself. Like I was thrown into somebody else's body, and I had somebody else's family, and like I couldn't really associate. Like I didn't really feel. It was hard. It was really hard. Like it was, and it's a common thing. Like I've found through TikTok that I'm not the only person that this happens to. But with that, again, I mean, not that I'm saying that that's all gone. There's some days I really still feel like that. But I just basically had to go, well, I remember who I was, right, before the stroke. So I've just got to, fake it till you make it type thing, right? And it really started working. And really, like, it started really connecting. I mean, I started becoming more connected with myself again. So,
hmm
but so the
So
neuroplasticity,
you started engaging more with people
and
to kind of help your
yeah,
connections as far as emotionally and
yeah,
socially and things like that. Wow.
it was rough. Like I said, there's no words to actually explain it. The best is like if you're watching somebody else's life,
right.
right,
Yeah.
or that open up in somebody else's life type thing. Even though you know the people, you love them, it's still there's a disconnect.
Right, right.
Right. And that goes back to they just really don't get it. Unless you've been through it, you really don't get it
and that's why
about
I mean,
what.
there is a sort of a prominent person, and she did a live one day, and I watched it, and she explained what she was going through, and it was the exact same thing. And that was the first time I was like it connected,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what you're doing is going to help so many people and create this community of hope for survivors. So
uh-huh.
I think, by joining forces, like, commenting on your things and you engaging on our things, that we can form a community that helps each other to recover as much as we can. And yes, we all need doctors' input and, we need medications and we need all those things. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the medical field, but we
Absolutely.
also need the emotional things and the social things to really help people through.
Absolutely. So I think that's a perfect segue, Paul. I had told you that we like to finish up with a tip of the day. Do you have a tip that you would like to share with stroke survivors? Young, old, anything in between.
I think so. I think that like we constantly talk about self advocation, right? Like it's
Mhm.
especially necessary in the Canadian health industry where you have to self advocate for yourself. But I think it's just as important to sort of advocate to yourself for yourself because
Absolutely.
with you,
Yes.
it's like the fact that it took 3 days. It's like, just, when there's something wrong with you. You really do. And you've got to just,
Yeah.
something's wrong with me. I better go to
Yes.
the, right?
Yeah, in fact, I brought it up and they're like, "No, it's just a headache." Well, nobody imagined how bad it was.
Right.
But right, I
But
should have done that.
I was talking to nurses too, and they say that is the biggest problem with stroke is that people don't come in when they should come in because they're,
Yeah.
well, I'm just going to get down here. I'm going to there's the for sure signs. Obviously, you're going to go in if you lose control of like your hand or your leg. But there's a lot of people that don't have it. They just have headaches. They feel weak in the limbs, and they try to excuse it. Right? They try to.
Right.
I'll get there
Well, because
tomorrow.
you can imagine that's what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
But
That for me, it never even crossed my mind that was a possibility.
and there's a fear of calling 911. There's a fear of like that process. I think, and that's something that people just call 911 because like calling 911 right when you start feeling it could be a matter if you are going to ever walk again or not, right? Because
Right.
the longer you wait, the more damage is done, right? That's
Right.
so you don't
Exactly.
not just self-advocate for yourself, with yourself. Like you have to tell yourself, I need to get this taken care of. Something's wrong.
Exactly. That's definitely a great tip.
Brilliant advice. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, on that note, it was such a pleasure to have you on, and you are so insightful and just a pleasure to talk to. I can't wait to get to know you more. And we'll have Erica come on at some point and we can talk more about it.
Hey.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
So,
you so much, Paul.
Brenda, did you have a tip of the day you wanted to share?
My tip is follow Paul's tip.
We will touch base again sometime soon. And thank you again, Paul, for joining us.
Keep listening to hear Paul's beautiful letter to himself.
So today marks the first year since having my stroke, and I'm going to post something that I actually wrote about 6 months ago. At the time, I was still suffering from partial insomnia and night terrors, and I woke up at about 2 a.m. My mind had brought me back to that first night after the stroke, when I knew what had happened to me, but I didn't know what recovery was going to look like at all, and I couldn't really get anyone to explain it to me. So I thought to myself, what would I say to myself then with what I know now? And I sat down and I wrote a letter. This is actually part of a larger series that we're going to be doing at BrainStorm, but I thought it was important to sort of post it today in its raw form as I wrote it 6 months ago. If you're in a similar situation as myself, I strongly suggest that you do the same thing. It's not only therapeutic, if you post it, it could help somebody.
Congratulations. If you're reading this, there's a good chance you've beaten some pretty horrific odds. You probably have very little desire to celebrate, and for good reason. This sucks ass. Despite the well-intentioned battle cries of loved ones, insisting you've got this, the next few months will very likely be the worst of your life. But I'm here to tell you, it is possible to get to the other side of this. Very likely even. These first days will be hell, consistent with a persistent fear of everything. Despair is going to try to consume you. It'll be the fight of your life, but you have to fight back. Dignity will have to be thrown out the window. Depending on the severity of the deficits the stroke have left you with, your medical team will be taking over some very personal things. You may have to rely on them to clean you, feed you, and maybe even wipe your ass. One of the more important things you'll need to do right now is get over yourself. Rehab in general will demand this, both short-term and long-term. The instruction book on how to move forward after a stroke unfortunately didn't automatically download when you had one. Neither did the So Now You're Disabled guidebook. So this education will be hard-won. You're about to discover that you can be surrounded by people, even people who love you, and still feel completely alone. This goes back to your battle with despair. You can't let it hold you back. You'll have to learn to live with it. I'm not going to lie to you, you may still feel this way for months, even years into your recovery, long after you've been sent home. But there will be help, and you'll value it more than you can express. Peer support, other survivors, connecting to people who share your experience will help make this feel less lonely. They will also be your instruction manuals, so seek them out. So now days or even weeks have gone by and it looks like you're not going to die. Not in the foreseeable future, anyway. The doctors have stabilized your vitals, and rehab's about to start its engines. This is your new job. It's a full-time job, and you'll have to give your whole self over to it. It's going to be relentless, but it will also be rewarding. Just know, like you, your rehab team did not receive a manual specific to your needs. They will have to feel things out. No two strokes are exactly the same, and a huge part of their skill is adapting on a case-by-case basis. Let them. Be patient with them. Listen to them, do what they say, but also go beyond. They'll give you the blueprint, but you're the one that has to build. Very likely your team won't have more than an hour a day with you. The rest of the day is all yours. The key now is strength. You have to rebuild strength back, both in the side affected by the stroke and the one that still works. Surprisingly, there's a lot you can do from your bed, and that's where you're going to start. Look up tutorials on YouTube and throw yourself into it. You now have all the time in the world. After strength, repetition is your next tool. You're going to hear the word neuroplasticity a lot. Repetitive motion is what teaches the brain to rewire. It may feel like you're putting in the hours and the days and nothing is happening, but it is. One day, a part of your body that hasn't moved in weeks will twitch, shift, or even bend, and that will be the first domino. The smallest progress will feel like the biggest win, and every inch of it will be earned. Early on, you probably had a doctor give you a grim diagnosis, something like, you're never going to walk again. Ignore that. They think they're being realistic, but the truth is they just don't know. Your progress will depend on what you put into it. That's not to say everything will magically fix itself, but no one knows enough about you to make such a definitive claim, so screw them. People will be both a blessing and a challenge. You're going to hear unsolicited comments about your condition. People with no experience suddenly becoming experts. Some will share stories of others who didn't make it in a misguided attempt to remind you that you're lucky to be alive. But those comments come from a place of privilege, or maybe even ignorance. Lucky isn't being unable to dress yourself. It isn't peeing into a bag, and it sure as hell isn't losing use or feeling of part of your body. There will be people who love you. They will reach out. Let them. Remember, they're scared too. Others, whom you expected to show up, may disappoint you. And then there'll be those who surprise you. You're now part of a community. Unfortunately, the membership requirements were brutal. But you're not alone. There are people who care deeply about you, even if you never meet them. We are bonded by trauma. No two experiences are exactly the same, but we have a pretty good idea of what each other's going through. We feel for one another. As I said earlier, seek us out, share your story, listen to ours. It'll help you heal. Now you might be thinking, that's great and all, but what about the fact that I remember who I am and my wife, but I have no idea what this cell phone thing is. I have absolutely no recollection of what they are. What is that about? Unfortunately, the side effects of stroke are so incredibly diverse that I can't possibly list them in one letter. Ideally, this would be a living document, updated by other survivors like a choose-your-own-adventure guide. Feeling like a loved one's been replaced by an identical imposter? Or you're in a place that looks familiar but feels fake. Flip to pages 123 and 187 to read about Capgras delusion and reduplicative paramnesia. There's a large community of stroke survivors online, and there's a good chance you'll find someone who's gone through something similar. Above all, know this, your story isn't over. You've already done something extraordinary by surviving. Now comes the slow, frustrating, painful work of reclaiming your life. Early in my recovery, I was informed that many survivors regard their stroke date as their new birthday. There's a new you, and you are yours to make how you wish. It won't be easy, and it won't be fair, but you're not alone. We're out here, fighting our own fight, cheering you on and walking beside you, even if you can't see us. So keep going. Rest when you need to. Pray if it suits you. Cry when you have to. Scream whenever possible, but don't stop. You're still here. And that matters. You matter.